It's July and it's time for the monthly update. The Railmaster is back, brands are throwing out their summer dial updates, the industry is still in trouble, and Breitling just might be the next Tudor. Let's dive in. The curious thing about Omega and their website is they almost never take down a product from their site, even if it is discontinued. If there's just one model available in an AD in the outer plains of Mongolia, then the watch is still on their site. But the Railmaster has actually been discontinued for a while. But it isn't anymore. It's back. What we're getting is a new Railmaster with two different dial variants. A gradated grey to black model and a brown model with a sub-second style. The watches are 38 millimeters. The watches utilize a variant of the Aquaterra case with curved lugs, and the movements are the ones you'll find in the Aquaterras as well. It also utilizes the new bracelet that you get on the new Aquaterras as well. Apart from the gradated dial, the main difference is that the case aren't as polished as the regular Aquaterras. A regular Aquaterra has polished flanks where the Railmaster is brushed end to end. Overall, the changes emphasize the tool nature of the Railmaster. Who's it for? This is the Omega version of the Rolex Explorer. It's the more tool-forward, more relaxed, more rugged Aquaterra. It's for people that feel the Aquaterra is a bit too shiny, a bit too formal, and a bit too flashy. It's this more down-to-earth aesthetic that is the key selling point, and there are a million of these kinds of watches. The Railmaster falls in the same kind of bucket as the Tudor Ranger, the Hamilton Murph, the Rolex Explorer, the more rugged Panerai Radiomir models, and in an alternate universe, also the Breitling Tudors. Pricing-wise, this is another case of the Omega in turn rolling the dice and coming up with a number. The model with no date and no center seconds is about 10% cheaper than the regular 38mm Aquaterra. You lose the date, you get less shiny, no metallic markers on the dial, and just more brushing. And I suppose it's fine, relatively speaking. If you can't tell, I'm a little bit disappointed with this watch, so looking for strengths has been a little bit hard for me. But in fairness, it's a regular Aquaterra, but cheaper. That's good. The sizing is good. The brushed and more rugged finish in general is also the right choice, which makes itself as a well-positioned, rugged Aquaterra, and that's a good thing. Weaknesses, I do not like the dials. I don't think that gradation has any place on this kind of watch. The sub-seconds color variant is just not to my taste at all. I vastly prefer the older dials, especially the brushed dials in silver and denim were just that much nicer. More importantly, they just seemed more toolish. The bracelet is also a deployant clasp. It has a small micro adjustment mechanism, but I do think specifically for the Railmaster, which is more of a tool watch, it should have been fitted with a regular clasp with multiple easy adjustment positions. I think that would have been more in keeping with the tool origins. Also, we sometimes complain about how Rolex is essentially just variants of the Oyster case. This is just a variant of the Omega Aquaterra twisted lug case. I mean, that's fine, but this is just a brushed Aquaterra, and I vastly prefer the straight lug Railmaster 1957 edition, but that might just be me. This watch does not knock my socks off in any way, and I do feel there are better options out there. Before we move on to the next part of the video, I'm asking you to subscribe and maybe even leave a like. It really helps out the channel, so thanks a ton if you do. Okay, you might think, grumpy bald man, he must hate the new Tudor Blancpain Lagoon Blue. After all, I've got a pet peeve with pink and Tiffany Blue as a strong contender as well, but I don't. This is the Blancpain 58 Inner Supper update with two things that make it stand out. A textured Tiffany-esque blue dial and a highly reflective steel bezel. This is a summer watch. It's supposed to be worn with linen and Cuban shirts, loafers, and whatever other footwear is on trend this summer. It's not subtle, it's eye-catching, it's meant to be noticed, and it's meant to be upbeat and fun, and it really is. Generally, these kinds of summer watches are not for the mass audience. Most people are better served getting a more restrained watch with a navy or dark blue dial or a black dial. Shiny bezels and light blue just draws much more attention to your wrist than a lot of people prefer. It loses some versatility, it loses any possible timelessness in a trade-off with fun, noticeability, and summerliness. That means you are either a person that has multiple watches and want a fun summer watch, one that you can pull out when you're less in your sit at home and binging Netflix throughout winter phase and more in your cocaine and strippers, Las Vegas trip kind of face. If you don't have multiple watches, you definitely need to think wisely. But if your personality and or clothing is more, let's call it extroverted, then this kind of watch is really going to speak to you. Strengths, it's a really good looking watch. I love the bezel. I love the dial, especially because the dial is also textured. It's not just a flat light blue like the one on the Chrono Flamingo, not pink. This isn't a half-assed summer watch. Tudor put some real effort into this and they full-assed this watch, and it's one of their best releases in a while. Weaknesses? None really. I suppose I could complain that it's not the Metas movement, but from what I hear, Tudor is having problems getting consistent yields on their Metas movement, so COSC is fine, and you save a little bit with no real world loss in accuracy or power reserve. It is for a very specific kind of buyer, but for that buyer, it's a good option. There are a lot of options like this watch. Nomos has their color clubs and world timers that do a bit of the same. Omega has their summer blue models that came out a couple of years back. Baltic at a much cheaper price point also do these kind of colorful watches for this summer edition as well. On a scale from grail to buy to shortlist to think about it or to better options out there, it's in category number 2 as a buy if the style of watch speaks to you. Richemont also having a bad year. I spoke to 2 separate Swiss manufacturers not long ago, and they and most others are laying people off or having people sent home to work half weeks or half days or even less. There just isn't a lot of demand for components and parts right now, and the big brands are not buying stock. Please don't write some terrible comment like serves them right for bleeding customers dry. These are regular employees who are earning less than they normally do. These are regular people that are trying to put food on the tables of their families. Have some empathy and don't be a terrible person. For Richemont, this is largely the case as well. Richemont has a different timing for their annual report compared to LVMH and Swatch Group, but the story is the same. Watchmakers not doing great right now. Specialist watchmakers as a division at Richemont were down 15-ish% in 2025. Underlying those numbers, there's 2 things that are worth calling out. The more expensive the watch and watch brand is, the less impacted they are. Global customers for ridiculously expensive watches are still there and they're not going anywhere. But as you get down to a price level where your customer base is more middle or upper middle class or lower upper class, then they are seeing a drop off in volumes. And this is perfectly normal. If you had $11 billion yesterday and you have $10 billion today, it's not really going to affect your buying behavior. But if your wealth is locked in a, $400,000 mortgage and your salary is $200,000 a year, which is a lot globally, you might actually hold off on buying a watch if you go from $200,000 to $180,000 a year. The further down you go, so you get to people who are making 80 or 60 or 50 or 40,000, the further down you go in terms of income, the more sensitive you're going to be to changes in the global economic outlook. You're going to cut back on your discretionary spending, and watches are entirely discretionary spending. Second, it's China. China's consumers don't spend money. As dominant as China are as an exporter, Xi Jinping cannot convince the Chinese people to spend money. And to put this in context, the average American saves between 3 and 6% of their income in some way, so under the mattress as a pension or as an investment. The number for an average Chinese person, 35 to 45%, 10 times more than an American. It's a huge problem for China that their consumers don't buy stuff, and it's a problem for watch brands in particular. The thing that concerns me about all this is what it could result in. Richemont are, after all, the people behind brands like Jaeger-LeCoultre. If they see that discretionary buyers in the low end are not buying and the high end continues to be robust, it's not a leap to see a reality where they conclude that raising the prices is the solution. No low-end customers, then raise the price and aim for the high-end customers. Maybe even cut back on variety in the low end. Long term, that would be incredibly stupid and would just further accelerate a decline in volumes, but I wouldn't put it past people in a boardroom, unfortunately. Rolex, Tudor, Omega, AP have all raised their prices in the US to compensate for the increased costs related to tariffs. It's not entirely surprising. A couple of direct-to-consumer brands have done the same, and it also looks like the inflow of cheap Chinese factory watches has declined in the US simply because of the increased tariffs and the removal of the de minimis exemption, which exempted products under $800 from taxation and tariffs. Things are still in flow because at the time of this update, very few countries have actually made meaningful new trade agreements with the US. Honestly, that was probably a little bit optimistic to get done in 90 days. Most trade deals take years to put together because of the complexity, but we'll see. In the meantime, Swiss watch exports to the US dropped by 25% in April. Asia also declined, but the US saw the biggest decline by a fair margin. This is concerning for a whole lot of reasons. It's because the US has generally been one of the markets that have seen consistent growth. If this continues, it's going to hurt big time. And again, don't be a terrible person in the comments. There are regular people who will lose their jobs because of all of this. I've never been a fan of the regular Superocean. I've always felt it was a little bit too chunky, and to me, it always felt like Breitling were trying to win the competition of ugliest possible minute and hour hand ever. I mean, even Tudor had the sense to rotate their square block 45 degrees, but not Breitling. The Superocean Heritage, on the other hand, is an entirely different beast. It's their Blancpain 58. It's always been a wearable, good-looking, more refined, more dress-forward diver. Where the regular Superocean is your conventional tool-forward diver, the Heritage more inhabits the luxury desk diver space much more comfortably together with Tudor and Rolex and all the others. Since this is a legacy design, there are tons of details and updates, but the most notable to me is the B31 movement. The B31 movement is this new movement Breitling has developed together with Selita's AMT division. You get 78 hours power reserve, you get full COSC certification in a 12mm tall case. In the 42mm model, there's also a 40 and a 38 and a 44mm model, which gives you lots of options. Really, that's fabulous. Who's it for? Well, first you have to ask the question about who is Breitling in general for. I stand by the claim that Breitling have for a long time not really catered that actively or explicitly to enthusiasts. Some brands like Christopher Ward, Tudor have actively cultivated the enthusiast community, using the community to build hype and engagement in the hope of spilling it over to regular consumers. Omega does this too with heritage editions and limited editions. Breitling just hasn't done it as much. They've been, to me, what feels like laser focused on regular consumers. It's not that they aren't enthusiast focused watches. They are the AV, the Navitimer, but Breitling just hasn't seemed to have enthusiasts as a priority. Just like Rolex don't really either. But with the new Top Times, with this new B31 movement, with a couple of the other heritage forward releases, Breitling is, I feel, speaking more to enthusiasts. The Superocean Heritage is for a person considering a Submariner or Tudor Blancpain 41 or maybe an Omega Speedmaster 300M. It's priced almost exactly the same. This is Breitling's premium offering, and it's a good one. Also, if you're just tired of the whole Rolex and Tudor hype, then this is a good alternative. The Superocean Heritage looks good. Simple as. It's legible, it's balanced, it's not over the top in terms of size and styling. You can actually choose between quite a few different sizes. The Milanese bracelet is a good one, and compared to the horrid clasp on the Omega models, this one isn't a brick on the underside of your wrist. The movement is also the star of the show. It's not metas like Tudor, but you know what it is? It's good looking. The Tudor movements are all behind closed casebacks for a reason. They are dogs to look at. Breitling here has got Geneva striping on the 3/4 plate. It has perlage on the base plate. You've got yourself an engraved and cut out rotor. I knock display cases a lot, but this case is, deserved. It's a good looking movement with specs to match. Anybody who knocks Selita should really take a look at this watch. It's the AMT division, but still, when Selita want to do something cool, and they did this with Breitling, they really, really do well. Weaknesses, the crown I think is a little bit chubby. The hour hand arrow pointer was made by an intern with PowerPoint and the resize tool. Oversized hands on divers is a consequence of designing for legibility, but often it just leads to some watches that look like toys. It's not quite Seiko Samurai levels of insanity, but it is one thing that I would personally tone down. But that is pretty much it. As for the price, somewhere between $6,200 to $8,200. Is that reasonable? Technically speaking, probably not. You get the same capability from Formex for a third of the price. It's a good 20 or 40% more expensive than a comparable Tudor, but it's cheaper than a Submariner, and it's priced exactly like a Seamaster 300M. Not far off. It's priced as a premium luxury mass-produced product. It's not cheap by any stretch of the imagination, so I find myself asking the question, have Breitling skimped, or have they tried to pack it with all the features that I would expect from this kind of price? And here the answer is yes. It's premium, it's shiny, it's a strong redesign with a fabulous movement. Verdict, shortlist for sure. As a point of note, Breitling have definitely upped their game. The new Top Times are really good. The Chronomat has always been a strong sleeper alternative to the Datejust type crowd. And this Superocean Heritage is just a super. strong release. The B01 square racing model that they also released is also excellent. After a long time of ignoring Breitling, I'm definitely consistently paying attention to what they're releasing. And it's because their designs are good, the feature set is really strong, they're consistent, and they're not aiming for the middle of the road. They are succeeding in being distinctive and taking some chances with the top times and the top time B01 racing. There's a willingness to not just follow trends, but also to try and set trend, which I really, really like. A little Microbrand release roundup. Disclaimer, a lot of these microbrands I don't yet have hands-on the specific watch, but I do know the brands and have a good feel for the brands from other models. Omega, Tudor, Breitling, they get so much attention that I think it's interesting to dedicate a little bit of time in these updates to smaller brands that I don't always talk about. We've got Ming Watches, which is a Malaysian brand that is one of these smaller Asian brands that are getting a lot of traction and a lot of attention, even from high-end collectors. $37,500 is a lot of money. Ming do call them crazy or wild dials quite a bit. This watch is no exception and is not going to be for everybody. It's a totalizer chronograph, but the thing that you have to care about is the level of machining that goes into the dial. This dial is laser milled from a single block of metal to create those sloping radial stakes with vertically and horizontally interlocking contours. This is a complex technique, and I don't know if it's a first in watches, but somebody out there will know better than me, but it's at least a rare technique used to this extent. And on top of that, the loom is white. That is easier said than done. So it's another investment in technique that sets this watch apart from all the colored loom dials out there. And the movement in this Asian watch is Swiss, from a company called Richemont. This watch isn't for everybody, but in terms of the technique and manufacturing and micro machining that it represents, is very much something worth considering. Main released a smaller version of their Manhattan Ultra Thin. I'll have an hands-on on that watch hopefully next week. Been really busy with my actual real job, but that's a really good watch as well. It's also a more interesting integrated bracelet watch than most others out there. The reason is most integrated bracelet watches lean to the sporty side in terms of design cues. That goes for the Royal Oak, the Icon from Lacroix, Bell & Ross, the BRX something, the 12 from Christopher Ward. There's actually not a lot of these watches that lean to the dressier side, but the main Manhattan 37mm Ultra Thin does, and that makes it a bit of a unique value proposition. Brew also launched a smaller version of their metric watches. It's mainly a nod to the ladies, and it's not pink. That's a good thing. The metric is a really cool watch. Then there's the Nevada Grecian that did something cool that I just thought I'd call out. They've got the Aquamar line, which is their dive watch line. It's a line they've had for a while, but this watch does something that deserves a call out. They've taken and removed the date complication, and instead they've repurposed the movement so you can switch between faux Tina loom on the plots or clear modern loom. It's 38mm, $1,000, Soprod movement, tropic style strap, and flexibility to have both regular loom and faux Tina is just cool. So that's fun. Finally, Blancpain released a 38mm 50 fathoms. When I initially heard about it, I was overjoyed. 38mm is a great size. It's close to 12mm in thickness. Imagine my joy. A modern, wearable 50 fathoms. And sure, it was going to be priced by a cocaine-sniffing intern who had just watched Wolf of Wall Street, but I was probably going to be okay with it regardless. And then I found out it was in full gold and pink. Why, Blancpain? Why? You killed the parakeet and taped its head back on. You offered the officer your beer, but you just peed in the bottle. You were looking for warmth, so you peed your pants on the bike. Why? Good Lord, why? And I'm not saying I'm the center of the universe, but I am positive someone at Swatch is just making pink watches to annoy me at this point. So I logged off for the day, yet again having confirmed that watch companies are employing equal parts idiots and people that are just trolls. But then I woke up, 38mm, no gold, no pink.
You know, Lloyd, just when I think you couldn't possibly be any dumber, you go and do something like this and totally redeem yourself.
It still has its problems. It's got a weird lug width. It's got a wild pricing for what is a premium luxury black dial diver. $16,700 on a strap, $20,000 if you want it on a bracelet. But Blancpain, well played. You got me there. This is approved. This is a shortlist option. That's all the news for this month. Share your thoughts in the comments as always. Like, subscribe. Cheers.